The sprawling, luxurious halls of Forrester Creations have always served as a volatile battleground for corporate power, family legacy, and deeply entangled romantic affairs, but the atmosphere has never been as suffocatingly tense as it is right now. Beneath the polished marble floors, the glittering chandeliers, and the facade of high-fashion elegance, a dark, sinister undercurrent of betrayal threatens to completely drown the reigning queen of the fashion empire. Steffy Forrester Finnegan, a woman who has spent her entire adult life fiercely guarding her family's moral high ground and corporate dominance, now finds herself standing on a terrifying, crumbling precipice. The pristine, untouchable image she has meticulously cultivated over the years is about to be violently shattered by the ghosts of her own reckless actions. And the architect of her impending doom is none other than a vengeful ghost from her family's turbulent and bitter past. To truly understand the immense gravity of this impending catastrophe, one must look back at the catastrophic chain of events that recently unfolded in the glamorous Principality of Monaco. Steffy had fled to the picturesque French Riviera, desperately hoping for a romantic reset and a peaceful escape with her husband, John Finnegan, only to be ambushed by the terrifying realization that his biological mother, the psychopathic Sheila Carter, was secretly stalking them? When Finn hesitated during a heated confrontation on the beach, offering a minuscule sliver of defense for the woman who had once shot them both and left them for dead in an alleyway, Steffy's entire world violently imploded. The deep-seated trauma of her past encounters with Sheila triggered a severe, uncontrollable psychological break. Feeling utterly betrayed and abandoned by the man who had sworn a sacred vow to protect her from this exact monster, Steffy hurled her wedding ring at Finn's chest in a fit of absolute fury and boarded the first commercial flight back to Los Angeles, seeking desperate refuge in the familiar, isolating sanctuary of the Forrester CEO office. Simultaneously, the Forrester Chief Operating Officer, Carter Walton, was drowning in his own inescapable ocean of profound despair. His beloved wife, Daphne Rose Walton, had just received a devastating, life-altering diagnosis of severe infertility and premature menopause from Dr. Lee Finnegan. Plunged into a dark, suffocating functional depression and entirely convinced that she was selfishly anchoring Carter down and permanently denying him his lifelong, desperate dream of fatherhood, Daphne made the agonizing, impulsive decision to abandon her marriage and flee across the globe to Paris. Left behind in the sprawling, lonely city of Los Angeles, Carter was a completely broken man, his heart shattered into a million irreparable pieces as he watched the future he had so carefully planned disintegrate before his very eyes. The universe, in its cruelest and most unforgiving twist of fate, orchestrated a tragic collision between these two devastated, emotionally bleeding souls within the silent, darkened walls of the executive suite. Grief and heavy alcohol consumption are a notoriously volatile and dangerous combination, and on that fateful, emotionally charged night, they served as the ultimate catalyst for an unforgivable transgression. Seeking desperate solace in a shared bottle of premium liquor and the comforting familiarity of their mutual heartbreak, Steffy and Carter crossed a sacred boundary that can never, under any circumstances, be uncrossed. The harsh light of the morning after brought a brutal, unforgiving reality as they awoke completely naked amidst the luxurious furnishings of the CEO office, the crushing weight of their monumental betrayal crashing down upon their pounding heads. Panicked, deeply ashamed, and desperate to preserve the fragile remnants of their shattered lives, they forged a frantic, desperate pact of silence, vowing to take the scandalous secret of their passionate, intoxicated affair to their graves, falsely believing that the soundproof walls of Forrester Creations would keep their monumental indiscretion safely hidden from the prying eyes of the world. However, the towering walls of the fashion dynasty have ears, and on this particular fateful morning, those ears belong to the absolute most dangerous woman to ever walk through the Forrester revolving doors. Quinn Fuller, the exiled matriarch, former wife of Eric Forrester, and legendary jewelry designer, had quietly and stealthily slipped into the building. Perhaps she was seeking a moment of bitter nostalgia, or perhaps she was actively hunting for an opening to reclaim her stolen glory and exact revenge on those who had cast her out. Whatever her initial, secretive motivation might have been, Quinn found herself standing breathlessly just outside the slightly ajar door of the CEO office, her presence completely undetected by the two panicked, whispering executives inside. The universe had just handed Quinn the ultimate destructive weapon, and she was more than ready to wield it with devastating surgical precision. As Steffy and Carter engaged in a hushed, frantic, and highly emotional argument about the events of the night before, their voices trembling with overwhelming guilt and sheer terror, Quinn's sharp, predatory instincts kicked into massive overdrive. She listened intently, her heart pounding with dark excitement as she heard the explicit, undeniable details of their infidelity, the desperate, tearful pleas to bury the truth forever, and the raw, paralyzing fear of what would inevitably happen if Finn or Daphne ever uncovered their sordid secret. With a wicked, triumphant smirk spreading slowly across her face, Quinn reached into her designer handbag, pulled out her smartphone, and firmly pressed the record button. She stood frozen in the shadows, perfectly still, capturing every agonizing confession, every whispered regret, and every damning piece of audio evidence that definitively proved the infallible, morally superior Steffy Forrester had committed the ultimate, hypocritical sin. The sudden realization of the absolute goldmine she had just captured sent a massive jolt of pure, intoxicating adrenaline surging through Quinn's veins. For years, she had been subjected to Steffy's relentless, righteous indignation, enduring endless, condescending lectures about morality, loyalty, and the sanctity of family values. Steffy was the primary architect who had ruthlessly spearheaded the vicious campaign to banish Quinn from Eric Forrester's life and from the prestigious halls of Forrester Creations, treating her like a toxic, incurable infection that needed to be permanently eradicated from their pristine world. Now, the tables had turned in the most spectacular, poetic fashion imaginable. The high and mighty Steffy Forrester had tumbled violently from her lofty pedestal, landing squarely in the absolute lowest of the mud, and Quinn Fuller was the sole, powerful keeper of the filthy, undeniable truth. Quinn did not rush her grand, destructive reveal. She sadistically savored the intense anticipation, allowing Steffy to falsely and comfortably believe she had successfully swept her massive infidelity under the corporate rug. It was only later, when Steffy was entirely alone in her spacious office, attempting to project an aura of unbothered, commanding authority, that Quinn finally made her calculated move. The heavy wooden door swung open, and Quinn strolled into the room with the effortless, intimidating grace of a conquering queen returning to claim her stolen kingdom. Steffy's immediate reaction was one of visceral disgust and defensive, explosive anger, loudly demanding to know how Quinn had bypassed the security team and aggressively ordering her to leave the premises instantly. But Quinn merely smiled, offering a chilling, triumphant expression that instantly sent a terrifying shiver of pure dread cascading down Steffy's spine. Without uttering a single word of explanation or engaging in any preliminary banter, Quinn slowly placed her smartphone on the polished mahogany desk and deliberately tapped the screen. The crisp, undeniable, and horrifyingly clear audio of Steffy and Carter's frantic post-coital argument instantly filled the silent room. Steffy's own desperate voice echoed off the walls, begging Carter to forget the intense passion they had shared. Terrified beyond measure that Finn would discover she had completely broken her sacred marital vows. As the damning recording played out in its entirety, the color completely and rapidly drained from Steffy's face. Her breath hitched painfully in her throat, her eyes widened in absolute, paralyzing horror, and the carefully constructed facade of the untouchable, powerful CEO crumbled into fine dust. She was trapped, hopelessly caught in a vicious snare of her own making, and the hunter was thoroughly enjoying every single agonizing second of the kill. When the audio finally stopped, a suffocating, heavy silence enveloped the expansive room, thick with tension and impending doom. Quinn leaned aggressively across the desk, her dark eyes locking onto Steffy's terrified, trembling gaze, and delivered her uncompromising, ruthless ultimatum. She did not want a quiet, substantial financial payoff, nor did she want a temporary, meaningless consulting gig to appease her ego. Quinn demanded total, absolute corporate resurrection. She dictated that Steffy must immediately and publicly reinstate her at Forrester Creations, not merely as a standard employee, but as the exclusive, permanent head of the jewelry design division. Quinn demanded an ironclad, unbreakable contract that guaranteed her creative control and position forever, ensuring that no Forrester could ever banish or fire her again. If Steffy dared to refuse or negotiate, the audio file would be sent directly to John Finnegan's personal phone within the hour, destroying everything Steffy held dear. The psychological torment that violently gripped Steffy in that exact moment was entirely unimaginable and utterly paralyzing. Her mind raced with the catastrophic, world-ending consequences of defying Quinn's demands. Finn had just frantically returned to Los Angeles from Monaco, begging on his knees for her forgiveness regarding his catastrophic lapse in judgment with his mother, Sheila Carter. Steffy had hypocritically deflected her own massive guilt onto him, using his desperate apologies as a convenient shield to bury her own horrific betrayal. If Finn were to hear that explicit recording, his heart would be irreparably, permanently shattered. The marriage, which had miraculously survived brutal shootings, traumatic amnesia, and the constant, looming, deadly threat of Sheila, would be instantly and violently annihilated by Steffy's own unforgivable infidelity? She would lose the absolute love of her life, the devoted father of her child, and the moral high ground she so desperately and arrogantly clung to. Furthermore, Steffy knew with absolute certainty that exposing the dark secret would completely and utterly destroy Carter's life, adding an unbearable layer of guilt to her predicament. In a cruel, unexpected twist of fate, Daphne Rose Walton had just realized the massive magnitude of her impulsive mistake and returned from Paris, eager and determined to fight for her marriage and overcome the severe trauma of her infertility diagnosis. Carter was already drowning in a suffocating sea of guilt, desperately trying to reconcile his passionate, drunken night with Steffy with the sudden, hopeful return of his beloved wife. If Quinn maliciously leaked the audio, Daphne would be utterly devastated, and Carter would permanently lose the woman he had vowed to stand by forever. Steffy was not just holding her own fragile life in her trembling hands. She was holding the ultimate fate and happiness of one of her closest, most loyal friends. Quinn thoroughly reveled in the palpable, intoxicating fear radiating from her former, defeated adversary. This was not merely a standard business negotiation. This was a deeply personal, highly vindictive, and intensely satisfying victory for the exiled designer. Quinn relished the delicious, poetic irony of the entire situation. The self-righteous woman who had constantly judged her, who had painted her as a manipulative, irredeemable villain unworthy of the prestigious Forrester name, was now squirming pathetically under the crushing weight of her own massive hypocrisy. Quinn made absolutely sure that Steffy understood the new, unshakable hierarchy within the building. Steffy might technically hold the prestigious title of Chief Executive Officer, but Quinn Fuller held the absolute controlling leash. The power dynamic had shifted completely and irreversibly, and Quinn was going to ensure that Steffy felt the sharp, humiliating sting of that reality every single day of her life. Left with absolutely no viable alternative and backed into an inescapable corner, Steffy was forced to swallow her immense pride and completely capitulate to Quinn's ruthless extortion. The internal humiliation was absolute and soul-crushing. She had to personally draft the ironclad contract, sign her name with a trembling hand, and officially, publicly welcome Quinn Fuller back into the Forrester Creations fold. She had to stand confidently in front of her entire family, including a highly bewildered Ridge Forrester and a deeply skeptical Eric Forrester, and convincingly pretend that rehiring Quinn was a brilliant, strategic business decision aimed at revitalizing the company's struggling jewelry line. Every single lie that fell from Steffy's lips felt like swallowing a jagged shard of glass. But she had to meticulously maintain the elaborate charade to protect her fragile, DC-tridden marriage from total annihilation. The corporate ripples of this forced, shocking decision are bound to be massive, highly disruptive, and deeply resented across the entire company. Electra Forrester has been attempting to navigate and lead the jewelry division, already facing immense pressure and the recent, frustrating pausing of her line due to the ongoing, bitter Logan corporate war. Quinn's sudden, permanent, and highly authoritative installation as the exclusive jewelry designer will completely and unceremoniously sideline Electra, adding another massive layer of toxic resentment and confusion within the company ranks. Steffy will have to awkwardly justify pushing her own ambitious family member aside to accommodate the very woman she once publicly despised and banished, raising intense, unquenchable suspicions among the Forrester loyalists. How long can Steffy possibly maintain the illusion before someone uncovers the sinister, blackmail-driven truth behind Quinn's miraculous, inexplicable return to power? For Steffy Forrester Finnegan, the sprawling, glamorous headquarters of Forrester Creations has completely transformed into a terrifying, gilded prison of her own making. Every single day she walks the familiar halls, she is intensely haunted by the looming, smug presence of her blackmailer. Every time she sees Quinn's triumphant, knowing smirk in the design room or across the boardroom table, Steffy is subjected to a silent, agonizing, and highly targeted reminder of her own spectacular moral failure. She lives in a constant state of perpetual, suffocating terror, knowing that her entire world, her beloved marriage to Finn, and her pristine, highly guarded reputation hang by a single, incredibly fragile thread held by a woman who absolutely despises her. The anxiety is a heavy, crushing weight on her chest, a daily psychological punishment far worse than any public scandal could ever be.